All right, and that is going to bring us on to blue. Just moving along here. First blue common, back to the 1 mana value slot, Behind the Mask. Single blue mana for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 6, and once again, that means exile cards with total mana value 6 or greater from your graveyard. Until end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/3. If evidence was collected, though, it has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn instead. So kind of like a little bit of a split card here, where you either pump your creature or if you collect evidence, make your opponent's creature smaller.
Yeah, so the idea is if they have a small creature, you can eat it. If they have a big creature, you can shrink it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's I cards like this, I still don't think it's great. They keep trying to push these a little bit, and I was optimistic a little bit in our set review for Relics Roar just because I thought there was going to be a lot of trinkety artifacts lying around, but
You
you
use
just
them.
never had something you were yeah you just never had something you were happy to just like trade off or get rid of
Mm-hmm.
or risk in combat. So I think this is going to be the similar feeling.
Yeah, you also have to consider that there's going to be like +1/+1 counters on your opponent's creatures sometimes, where it's not actually going to become a 1/1. It'll be like a 2/2 or something. I don't know why I specifically thought of this, but it is kind of nice on the Drake, the red blue Drake, because that thing's always gonna have base like it's like 1 mana deal 4. Yeah, I do like this more than Relics Roar. Obviously, it's a little bit better than that card, but a lot more. Maybe if you care about evidence, yeah. I guess the other thing is that blue is fairly aggressive in this set. You're going to be attacking in a lot of your blue deck, so this kind of card gets a little bit better. But that was true for LCI too. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm probably going to start low on it, but I could see coming up on it. I'm going to give Behind a Mask a D.
D. I was going to go D plus, so
Okay,
I'm actually ended up higher than
yeah,
you, but yeah.
fair enough.
Okay.
What's up next?
Next is Bubble Smuggler, one in a blue for a 2/1 octopus fish, which sure, why not? It has disguise. Disguise to flip up is 5 in a blue, and as it is turned face up, put 4+1/+1 counters on it. So again, meaning you can't respond to like you can't shock it or whatever in response.
Yeah, so it's like 2 mana 2/1 or 9 mana 6/5 installments basically. I don't know. What's your take on the card? Because we were saying before that anything that's like a 2 mana 2 power creature can't be that bad in the set because it just trades with disguised creatures on turn 3. Is the modality here something you're interested in, or is this probably going to be like a card you're just not going to play very often?
Yeah, so actually, we just finished white. Because I was going
Oh
to
yeah.
summarize
Let's do a
what blue
little
will play.
let's do a little
A
summary. Yeah,
quick
yeah.
white
Sorry,
summary.
jumped ahead a little bit here.
So white, I think white and red are like the best colors by a good chunk. Does seem aggressive, makes lots of tokens. Seems like it pairs with pretty much every other color really well. So I think you're like just going to be really happy to be in white for like the commons are great, the uncommons are great, and the rares and mythics we get to tomorrow are going to be great. So I think white's just incredible. Like
Yep,
we can probably just leave it there.
I agree with that. Big time. Yep. No.
Blue, on the other hand, I think is a bit more spellsy. Like I think I like a lot of the spells for 2 mana in blue. So not playing a creature on turn 2 in blue, I think won't hurt as much, and it kind of makes me want this a
A
little
little less.
less.
Yeah, I think so
Because like
too.
blue red wants you to be playing more artifact type things, which this isn't. And then like if blue black's kind of control-y, like you'd rather just play the thing with Surveil 1
Right.
than this. And so I don't really know where this fits, and I'm not like not very excited about this thing.
No, I'm just gonna give it like a D. It's
Yep.
very like when it comes down to it, it's just like a vanilla creature. So, Jaded Analyst, 1 in a blue for a 3/2 defender. Usually they make these 3/3s for 2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, Jaded Analysis loses defender and gains vigilance until end of turn. It's a detective as well.
Yeah, I really wish they had made this a 3/3.
Yeah, maybe thought it was too good against those disguised creatures like that. That's
But
why.
like, come on, give
Yeah,
us a lot of the disguised creatures flip into 3/2s anyways. Like
right.
they could still trade with this thing. Give me a chance to block.
Yeah, so we had the one from the last set, Ixalan, the 3/3 defender that when you played a artifact, it got to attack. And blue red was like a very aggressive deck. Blue white's the aggressive deck this time. I think it's gonna have like similar vibes. But I do think that like second toughness really just makes this card not something I'm interested in. Like give it a third toughness and that it's fine. It's just about as good as the shipwrecks entry. but I don't think this is a good one.
If this triggered off of detectives coming into play or being flipped, I
Sure.
think it would be playable.
Yeah. Like that's a great point. I didn't even consider that. Like I didn't even mention that the actual trigger condition's a lot worse or a lot harder to detain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're drawing cards, like why do you want to be attacking?
Yeah.
Like it has vigilance, I guess, but still.
D minus.
I'm gonna give it a
A
D. Like
D? It's a two mana card. Yeah. Fair enough.
Like I'd rather play. I gave Bubble Smuggler a D, and I think if I'm playing defensive and I need a 2-drop, I'm gonna play this more than a Bubble Smuggler.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Deduce, cool little card here. 1 and a blue for an instant. Draw a card, investigate. Cool.
Yeah, like think twice. Kind of
better. I mean, worse in the sense that you can't like mill it to get the flashback card in your grave, but better on rate. Yeah, it's good. Like good as a card advantage tool. Good as a and there's not a lot of like spells matter stuff, but just good for your things that carry out investigate. Yeah, can't really complain.
Yeah, I mean we talked like you can't really take turn 2 off, so you certainly can't stock up on these and play a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like this card. Like it gives you an artifact which you can use for
various things,
fun and profit, whatever we're gonna say. And it does just kind of fuel more collecting evidence, just like cycling through your cards and putting more stuff in the graveyard. So it kind of reminds me of how we just saw the divination instant speed. Like this is kind of similar.
Yep.
Where it's going to be good, but not that good because you can't just not affect the board.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Want to give it
like a C?
Yeah, I was gonna say the first copy is just a C. Probably gets a little bit worse in multiples unless your deck is like specifically, a Deduce control deck or something like that. But yeah, C is for the first copy.
Sure.
What's next?
Reasonable Doubt. 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controllers pay 2. And suspect up to 1 target creature.
So we've got an aggressive leaning counter spell here. Because
whether you suspect your creature or theirs, both of them are aggressive sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense. Like we've talked about blue-white as an aggressive deck, and I think a red-blue looks like a pretty aggressive deck. Blue-green, blue-black, less so. But this isn't like so out of place. How much do we like the effect though? Well, it's kind of funny because counter spells, you kind of think of them as control cards, but they are pretty effective in aggro decks sometimes too, or like more aggressive decks where you're getting on board, you're playing your 2, your 3, your 4, and then you're already have established your board presence. You leave up some mana, and they're gonna cast a removal spell, cast a big blocker or something. You have the mana up for this, so not gonna be your turn 2 play in these decks, but it still makes sense in the kind of deck, even though it might not seem like it does.
Yeah, I think I'm okay playing this in a defensive deck. Like if you don't have 2-drops that want to attack, leaving up a counter is not a bad thing to be doing. And it does play nicely. You talked about this earlier, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with 2 mana up.
Sure.
Like in terms of flipping disguised creatures or drawing cards or cracking clues or doing this. It's pretty easy to not be punished for leaving this up, and you'll still have something else to do with your mana.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, like sometimes this quench effect, it's a little bit awkward, quench being like just this card without the suspect text. 2 is like, unless they pay 2, is kind of at the point where it's like, yeah, you're gonna get them sometimes, you're not going to, but sometimes your opponent's gonna like crack a clue into a card and they've already spent 2 mana that turn, so they have less mana to pay for this, right? That's gonna come up sometimes too. So what do you want to give Reasonable Doubt? I think it's a fine card. I was gonna give like a C-.
I was gonna go C.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I'm cool with that. Unauthorized Exit. 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Surveil 1.
Yeah, another blue instant for 2 mana.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I think there's a lot of value creatures in this set, so bouncing things is, I think, going to be a little bit worse than usual, but still a pretty good rate. And Surveil 1's a nice thing to tack onto this. I was going to give this one like a C-.
Yeah, I right there too. Yeah, your first copy is never going to be bad in your like control or aggro deck really. So yeah, C-. What's next?
Next is Crime Stopper Sprite. 2 and a blue for a 2/2 fairy detective. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 6. It has flying, and when it entered the battlefield, tap target creature. If evidence was collected, put a stun counter on it.
Yeah, so seems okay. It's Windrake with some upside. It's just worse than
Frost Trickster with some downside.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's worse Frost Trickster, unless you really care about exile cards in your grave.
Or being a detective, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think it's fine. Like, I think it's just a C minus. Like, I'm not gonna be thrilled to put
Yeah,
this card in my deck, but never gonna be too sad in an aggressive deck.
I'm gonna go D plus.
Yeah,
I don't like
that's
these
fair. No,
types
no,
of cards
I'll join you
typically.
there too. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that it's kind of funny. Usually, when cards have more words on them, that's a good thing, right? But this one's like
Right.
you're either to say tap a thing doesn't untap all the time. Projector Inspector is up next. 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human detective. When it or another detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective is flipped up, you may draw a card, and if you do, you discard a card.
Yeah, I like this thing. Like repeated looting we saw from Lord of the Rings is just a very powerful ability.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be able to do that fairly consistently because there's a lot of detectives in there. And then the stats normally we say, oh, 3/2s for 3, it's understated, but it's kind of not. Like that's kind of what you get in this set.
Yeah, and just spotting you the first one, just like it doesn't have to trigger off of anything else. This one just does it when it comes in. Yeah, I think it's a totally solid card, just like a solid C.
I was going to give it a C plus.
Oh wow, okay, yeah,
Okay.
okay. What do we have next?
Dramatic Accusation. 2 and a blue for an aura, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And you can pay blue to shuffle the enchanted creature into its owner's library.
So a potential fix for these claustrophobia effects that don't get rid of abilities, don't get rid of, any annoying passive things going on. It's a little bit not quite cooped up because that was like the opposite,
Yeah,
two
it's
mana
the
to
flip.
play.
Yeah.
And blue is certainly something. It's going to mean that sometimes you can't cast another blue card that turn. But I'm optimistic about this being better than these kind of cards generally are, especially because another thing is that it's only a single blue in the mana cost, not randomly blue for some reason. They felt like they had to
Yep.
add that on. Yeah, C plus for Dramatic Accusation.
I'm just gonna go C.
Okay, yeah, fair
I'm
enough.
always lower on these types of
Yeah,
cards.
no, I'm not high on them either. Another card for your 1/4 that goes and gets enchantments too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's another kind of archetype of card that has ebbed and flowed over the years. This is Cold Case Tracker. We've got a 4 mana, 3 and a blue, 3/3 flyer, and it's a detective. And when it dies, you investigate. So the days of Phantom Monster just being sick limited card have come and gone. Generally a little bit too small. Not they have to have do have something else going on, and is dying and investigating enough, and being a detective.
And the creatures being slightly small, and I think all those things add up to yes, and yes. Like
Yeah,
I actually like this thing.
me too. Yeah, I think that I was like, I was so when I first saw this card, I was so ready to not like it, and then I was like, oh, you know what? That actually isn't that bad. Because one of the things is like you never really want to block with your 4 mana 3/3 flyers, right? But you're kind of okay with that with this. If you're put in a position or game state where you're like, yeah, I just got to block here, you don't feel too bad about it. So I do like this card.
Yeah, we had Talus Lookout in DMU. And it's
Yep.
kind of similar.
Yeah, kind of similar. C plus. I'm gonna give this a C plus.
Yeah, I was like almost gonna give it a B minus.
Oh, nice, cool. Yeah,
I think I might. We'll give it a hot take B minus.
Okay, yeah, I'll stick with my C plus.
Okay.
Out Cold is up next. 3 and a blue for an instant. This spell cannot be countered. And the reason we mentioned before there's a lot of spells that can't be countered in the set, the reason that there's a lot of them is ward abilities technically counter the spell. So if you have a spell that can't be countered, it ignores ward. And the effect of this is tap up to 2 target creatures, put a stun counter on them, and investigate.
Okay, so you know that usually I hate these types of cards.
Yeah, I do.
However, pack on, draw a card onto them, and all of a sudden this starts to look a lot more like Snow Day, which was quite a good card.
Yeah, tacking on draw a card to a lot of cards can make it a pretty good card. And yeah, Snow Day is the comparison I was thinking of as well from Strixhaven. So it's kind of funny. Usually we see this as like aggressive cards, but I think the draw a card on it makes it so that I don't mind this in my controlling deck either.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I was going to say the exact same thing. I'm actually like reasonably happy,
Yeah.
and being able to tap their disguised creatures too is just like that's what really pushes it over the edge, I think.
Yes, no, I think so too. Yeah, they really. The last time we saw this effect at common, like or anytime we've seen this effect at common, it hasn't been very good. But they pushed it in multiple ways. So yeah, I like Out Cold. Do you want to? Are you willing to go C plus or?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, let's give a C plus to Out Cold.
Like a C plus, I'm not going to play multiple copies of this, but I think I'll always play the first one.
Yep, I like that. What do we have next?
Benthic Criminologists, 4 and a blue for a 4/5. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, draw a card.
Yeah, so this one's interesting. So you definitely need to be in a deck where you kind of feel like, yeah, I've got a lot of clues lying around.
Yeah, it doesn't give you card advantage from the clues, but it saves you 2 mana.
Yeah, that's not bad. There's the white 5-drop that we kind of liked. I think this is a little bit worse than that card. Doesn't always do the thing. Yeah, 4/5.
Yeah, I don't hate this thing.
No, I don't
love it.
I don't. Yeah, I don't love it. Don't hate it. You want to give it like a D plus, C minus?
Yeah, I was debating between those 2 grades. I think I'm gonna give it a C minus.
Okay, yeah, I'll go D plus on this. I think I'm slightly lower. Hotshot Investigator is up next. 6 mana, 5 and a blue for a 4/4. It's a detective, an Elkin detective. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 1 other target creature to its owner's hand, and if you control that creature, you investigate.
Yeah, we've seen these expensive bounce. Like this is like Aether Snipe or whatever, right? Like
yeah.
They're usually better than they look. Like the 2/5 flyer versions were solid. 4/4, I'm not super into, but it's probably still playable.
I'm a bit higher on it. I do like this card quite a bit. I think it's a pretty big swing.
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, tempo is the name of the game these days, and this gives you tempo.
Yeah, I was actually like, you can't give too high of a grade to a 6-drop that's not exceptional, but I was just gonna give it a C.
Okay, I'd written down my grade as C minus.
Okay,
so we're not that far.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, now we move on to the uncommons. Back to the 1-drops. Mistway Spy is our first one. Single blue mana for a 1/1 flyer. It's a detective. It's got Disguise for 2 mana, 1 and a blue. And when it's turned face up, until end of turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, investigate. And that's not a one-time thing. It's any creature you deal that deals damage will make a clue token.
Despite that, I believe this card is quite bad.
Yeah, it's not very good.
I think you could shave a mana off the disguise cost and it would still not be amazing. That's a really bad sign.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cat, the forum familiar, where it's like a little bit of a fake split card where you don't ever really want a 1 mana 1/1 flyer with no ability. And to get this going, 3 and then 2, that's not great. Detective.
So 1/1 flyer, even if it gets you 4 clues, you're not gonna have time to use those. You're playing a 5 mana 1/1.
Yeah, I do think Detective puts it over, to not just really bad. I'm gonna give this a D plus, but yeah, it's not.
I'm gonna go D minus on this thing.
It's a little bit deceptive in the fact, we've been kind of trained to see that the 1-drops are just good until proven otherwise. I think this one's kind of the opposite here. What's up next? Another clue.
Next we have Candlestick, another clue equipment. This is blue for artifact clue equipment. It has equip for 2 mana. It has pay to sacrifice it, draw a card, of course. And equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature attacks, surveil 2.
So surveilling 2 every turn. This is, I think, the one I'm maybe most excited about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this one and the red one are both maybe okay.
Yeah, that's a lot. And the power and toughness boost too, and being able to crack it. Yeah, I actually think this one's pretty playable. Not great, but playable.
So C minus?
Yeah, I was gonna give Candlestick C minus. Cool.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you there.
Case of the Filched Falcon. Single blue mana for a case. Filched Falcon. Single blue mana for a case. When it enters the battlefield, you investigate. To solve it, you control 3 or more artifacts, and when it's solved, the case you gains the ability, 2 and a blue, to sacrifice this case. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on target on an artifact creature. It becomes a 0/0 bird creature with flying in addition to its other types. So basically, you get to turn one of your clues into a 4/4 flyer.
Yeah. So the best case for this card is pretty insane, right? You play it turn 1. Turn 2, you play the Gear Drake or whatever it's called, and it just immediately solves the case.
Auto flips, yeah.
And then you can just turn your clue and attacking for 5 power in the air, flying on turn 3. That's amazing, right? And I still think this card's good, but the awkward thing is, if you ever feel like you want if you're in the late game and you're not doing much, you want to sacrifice that clue,
right.
And this kind of tells you you're further away from solving the case if you crack the clue.
Right, you're often going to be cracking clues as the game goes on, and then you draw this, and it's oh, okay, what am I supposed to do? So it's a good card in your opening hand if you've got a lot of artifacts, and a fine one later.
Yeah, because it's still 3 mana cycle,
Yeah,
which
it's not
is
going to
like
be terrible.
not good, but it's not that terrible.
Yeah. So what do you want to give this one?
I still think it gets a pretty good grade. Like you need to almost be blue red.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's maybe blue white, although white makes a lot of clues too, I guess.
Oh, blue black, like
But
blue black's like the clue control deck. Like black's got some stuff in there too that investigates.
sure, so
Yeah.
yeah, maybe this is just better than I'm giving it credit for. I give it like a synergy B.
I was gonna go synergy B minus, but yeah, we're in the same ballpark.
Okay.
Curious Inquiry. We got a single blue mana aura, enchants creature. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, investigate. So this is how you get your case to to turn on quickly after you've drawn it later.
Yeah, but I don't want to play this. Like there's so many 2/1s and 3/2s. Like getting an extra point of toughness, I don't think it's going to matter a lot of the time.
So there was the card from Rivals of Ixalan, which I know is a while back now, but it was Curious Obsession, right? It gave, like, I always feel like the +1/+1 on that, which was this card, but you don't investigate, you draw a card. That actually did feel meaningful. Different formats and all, different power and toughnesses line up differently, but I wouldn't write it off right away, basically.
I mean, drawing a card is way better than investigating.
It is, yeah. And then you keep on chaining things. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, that trade-off is something that you don't want to ignore. Yeah, I don't think this is a card you need to really pay too much attention to. I would just give like a D. If you put it in your deck, you've got a lot of cheap flyers, but otherwise, yeah, not great.
Okay, I was also on a D, so you're with me there.
Sweet. Ooh, nice one coming up. What do we have next?
Exit Specialist. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human detective. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. And it can disguise for 1 and a blue, or like undisguise, I guess, for 1 and a blue. When it's turned face up, return another target creature to its owner's hand.
Yeah, that was a nice one. And yeah, detective, like this Ice Feather Aven from Cons is kind of like this card, and that card is fantastic. And yeah, just bouncing pretty much anything is pretty good. Like a token, Vasika token is great. Vasika 5 drops great. Has a little bit of evasion. Yeah, I think Exit Specialist is awesome. I'd give it a B.
Yeah, more like in Cons, there was just a lot of big dummies that flipped
yeah,
up for generic mana. So it like, as I said, I think bouncing will be slightly worse in this set. But being a detective is great, and it's still going to be a good card.
Yep.
So I'll be with you on a B.
Burden of Proof up next. 1 and a blue for an aura. It's got flash. The enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's a detective you control. Otherwise, it has base power and toughness 1/1 and can't block detectives.
Right. So this is another detective tribal card because no matter which side you're playing, you want to have mostly detectives in play. Kind of reminds me of Bonds of Faith, way callback from original Innistrad.
Yeah.
That card was good, and this card's even better.
Yeah, the flash makes it like a flash combat trick. I actually really like this card. Just even maybe a little bit more like flash enchantments that come in, give your creature power and toughness, then stick around. If you haven't played with those kind of cards before, are much better than they might look. It's not like, okay, cast my trick and then cool, back to normal next turn. You now have a 4/4 that your opponent has to tussle with. So yeah, I
almost always cost 3 mana. Sorry,
no, go yeah.
Almost always cost 3 mana to do
right.
this, right? Like we've seen a lot of these be like 2 and a green for +2/+2 aura at flash speed. This is just 2 mana.
This is really good, yeah. So I think obviously it's a synergy / build around card, like synergy B. Would you say B minus maybe?
Yeah, I'd written down B,
Great.
assuming that you're going to play a bunch of detectives. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Eliminate the impossible. This is 1 and a blue for an instant. Investigate, and then creatures your opponent's control get -2, -0 until end of turn. If any of them are suspected, they're no longer suspected.
Tacking on investigate to these cards is a good way to sign me up.
Yep. That was a lesson that we learned like back in the first time we saw investigate with Shadows over Innistrad. There was all these like marginal effects. We're like, -4, -0, whatever. Everything that had investigate just played a little bit better than it looked. So if it's your first time playing with these kind of cards, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, you can really get people with this card.
You can have huge blowouts, and that's the thing, like huge blowout potential, and then the downside, or like the floor is you cycle it and investigate. Yeah, really great. Another good one.
Like a B minus?
Yeah, another B minus. Yeah, Blue's got some pretty good uncommons here. For specifically the detective decks, I guess. Faithlight is up next. 1 and a blue for an aura. It's got flash. And when it enters the battlefield, the enchanted creature gets hexproof until end of turn. And the enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has flying.
Yeah, so Blue's got a lot of tricky stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot of little tricksy things.
As usual. This one, the fact that it doesn't boost toughness is like there was Saiba Cryptomancer in March of the Machines that was incredible because it kind of gave you a body that added more stats and the hexproof. This one is almost only a hexproof trick, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Like if that doesn't matter in this set, then this card's not going to be very good. But it is a really nice, like once you protect something, you've turned it into a must kill threat again. So you're forcing them to have another removal spell. So it's going to be really good when it works.
Yeah. Yeah, not quite as high on this one as the last two that we were kind of really on about, but I think it's like a C plus.
C plus. I was gonna give it a C, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. Again, the lens of this is an aggro card, not a control card.
Yeah.
All right, what do we have next?
Forensic Researcher, 2 and a blue for a 1/3 Merfolk Detective. It has tap to untap another target permanent you control, or you can tap and collect evidence 3 to tap target creature you don't control.
Yeah, so notably, this is like kind of a ramp creature. It's going to be the thing you're playing it on, using it for on turn 3. And then later, you get to tap down. You're not going to be able to tap down things forever, but a little small. Not that you're getting into combat very often.
One of the few creatures with 3 toughness for 3 mana, but again, I don't think that actually matters that much. So
yeah, this is an interesting one. I think this is fine. Like, not an amazing card. I think this is somewhere like the C- range, maybe C.
Okay, I was gonna give it a D.
Oh, just like yeah. All right.
Yeah,
maybe I'm being colored by the rarity symbol here. Classic trap. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's not a great card. I'm gonna go D plus on it though. I think there's like enough upside here of just using it, get a bit of a mana advantage, and then use it later.
Okay, I'll stick with my D.
Right,
I don't think it's good. Yeah.
Furtive Courier, 2 and a blue for a Merfolk Advisor. It's a 3/2. Sorry, it's a 3 mana 3/2. It can't be blocked as long as you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. And when it attacks, draw a card, discard a card.
Yeah, that text is, but I think that like the common version of this is better, right? The one that draws and discards whenever you play or flip a detective, including itself.
I think so too. Yeah, because like that just
still
sits around.
Yeah, I still like looters, so I still think this is going to be playable. But this one's more in like the C- range. I think I gave the other one a C+ or something. But
I agree. And this one only, like, pretty much only loots once a lot of the time, but the first loot's usually the most important one, right? Just like the looting does have kind of diminishing returns. Yeah, so I'll join you at C-.
Yeah, and I mean this does threaten to just kill your opponent, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Surveillance Monitor. This one, one of the first really awesome evidence cards we've seen. 3 and a blue for a 3/3. It's a detective. When it enters the battlefield, you can collect evidence 4, and whenever you collect evidence, you make a 1/1 flying Thopter creature token.
Yeah, two different size bodies. We talked about these cards being great. The issue is going to be that it's not that easy to collect evidence for on turn 4.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
although
the looting cards we talked about will help with that.
Also, just like I don't know, trading off your disguise creature, that works.
Yeah, as long as there are ways to do it, but it's by no means a guarantee.
Yeah, it's not a given. Card's good though. Still, like if you make 2 off of this, like one enters, one after, you're definitely above right there. Yeah. What do you want to give it? I think I'm probably somewhere in like the B range, like a B-.
Yeah, I was gonna say B-.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's funny how this isn't like is this better than the Goblin, the 2/3/2 make a 1/1 just in the draft? I mean, it's close. It's not even clear.
Yeah, I don't think so. The other one's so much more flexible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Sudden Setback is next. 2 blue for an instant. The owner of target spell or non-land permanent puts it on the top or the bottom of their library. So sort of your classic Griptide / unlucky drop, but it can also hit spells.
But it does cost 2 blue.
Yes, cost 2 blue.
So bit of a downside there. I think there's not a lot of expensive cards that I want to hit with this. So I'm not starting very high on this one.
Well, there kind of is. Like, just the fact that when your opponent flips up a disguise creature, like, they've invested a lot.
Well, sure. If that's assuming the disguised creature hasn't provided any value.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. Yeah, it's always funny. These I think these trend more good than not. We've seen a few not be good, so I am going to start high-ish on it, like or like not high, but like I'm going to start as this is a good card and give it a C plus. But
Okay,
yeah,
I was just gonna go see.
okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
This is a weird one. Living Conundrum, 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 2/5 elemental. It has hexproof. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you skip that draw step instead, or skip that draw instead. As long as there are no cards in your library, Living Conundrum has base power and toughness 10/10 and has flying and vigilance.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that the last card we saw is just like a counter to this because you can just give them a card in their library and they can block
That's
it.
really funny, yeah. That's great.
But there's also like a black common that sacrifices creatures like that can deal with this. So the fact that there are answers for this at like multiple rarities across multiple colors, even when you do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
makes me a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, so how do you even do the thing? Like, you draw a million cards, or you self-mill yourself? And there's not, like, a ton of self-mill. Like, it exists, but it's not like it's just tacked onto every card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't like you need this to win you the game by itself after that. It's not like with some of these other cards that win you the game ish when you have an empty library, it means you can like choose what you draw and reset things and kind of sculpt the game you want it. But this, it just has like you got nothing else. It's just this.
Just this, yeah. And it does end the game pretty quickly, right? Like,
Yep, flying vigilance, hexproof,
yeah.
10/10
I
for
think...
sure. And I like the design on this, but it's
Yeah, me too.
not 100% reliable.
No, I think this is more fun than good, but also, like, not... It's not like, oh, you're just doing this if you want to goof around. Like, I think if you're doing it, it's not too bad. Is it strategically a great thing to do? I also don't think so. So I'd, like, responsible grade of, like, a D minus or something.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say D instead of an F.
yeah,
Basically.
yeah. If you're
Yeah.
a dreamer, you can go for it, and this is a fine thing to do. Okay, last blue uncommon here. Agency Outfitter. 4 blue for a 4/3 flyer. It's a detective. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library, your hand, your grave, every game zone except exile for cards named Magnifying Glass and or Thinking Cap. Put them on the battlefield. If you search this way, your library this way, shuffle. So as a reminder, Thinking Cap is that 1 mana detective equipment, and Magnifying Glass is that really terrible mana rock.
Right. So I think if you have this and 2 thinking caps, are you gonna play it?
I think so. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like drawing a card and making turning this thing into a 5/5 flyer. Yeah, it's not something I imagine it's gonna go around the table. Not something people are gonna take highly. So like you're like, okay, like I wield this. I'm like playing detectives. I'm playing 2 thinking caps. Yeah, it's like a synergy C or something.
Yeah. Well, like let's assume you're playing. Just if you have. I don't think with 1 thinking cap you'd play it. I
Right.
think you need 2.
Yes, I agree.
But with 2, with this as your top end in a like mostly detective deck, I think I could see it. And so I'll give it like a D because I'm gonna play it very few times, but it will make the deck every once in a while.
And you also just like shouldn't put Magnifying Glass in your deck just because you have this card, right? Like you're not.
Yeah, if you have like 2 of these and 3 thinking caps, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
even know if that's a
I
thing,
guess
but-
this does. Your Magnifying Glass lets you cast this on turn 5, but yeah, no, yeah. I'll join you there with your D grade. All right, that's the end of blue. Quick thoughts on blue?
Blue seems more aggressive than usual. Like there's certainly a lot of cards that want you to be proactive and want you to like protect your creatures.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what the control deck is supposed to be in this format. Like blue black maybe, but then you're missing out on a huge chunk of cards. Not as good as white, but a lot of trickiness to it. So I do think top players will be able to leverage blue decks fairly well, but it's going to be interesting to find which one of these are going to fit into specific strategies.
Yeah, and I was gonna hit on that exact point. There's a lot of cards that aren't just like, oh yeah, I get what that does, and I'll put it in my deck and I'll do it. There's a lot of like, you almost have to figure out like what the card's trying to do, where you should play it. Blue hat tends to have that going on a lot of the time. So yeah, I like blue as a color, but we'll kind of have to see how it lines up with everything else.